Guilty. Guilty on all charges. That is the verdict in the Trump org trial. A jury has now convicted the entire company, this came in late today, of every charge leveled in the case. That's criminal tax fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying records. This is a blow to Trump's entire company, to his financial standing, and to how that company may try to do business in the future. Now, if you followed this here, if you're one of these Americans who's watched American news and wondered when will there ever be accountability for what looks like a long trail of Trump misconduct, malfeasance, and, as seen today, convicted illegal activities, well, you might know some of the path. Let's just go through it briefly. The path to this verdict really took off when a former Trump lawyer and Trump org executive, Michael Cohen, first publicly blew the whistle on what he alleged was financial misconduct in testimony before Congress. Now, whatever you think of that path, and whatever you think of Mr. Cohen, who ultimately also went to prison for other convicted crimes related to working for Donald Trump, the fact is he made those allegations in public, he made them under oath, and that's the kind of thing that then investigators, prosecutors look at, and they have to make an individual determination over whether to act on that. Well, act they did. The DA's office pursued that case based in part on Mr. Cohen's information, which they found to be both credible and provable, because you got to get a jury on board. And they convicted Donald Trump's top money man, CFO Alan Weisselberg. That was just this past August, which led to his testimony against the entire Trump organization in this case. It also got him a reduced prison sentence. The verdict today, brand new, is a legal slam dunk, guilty on all counts. It also came quick, a speed that may reflect there was just very little doubt among these jurors after hearing the case. They returned this verdict after deliberating for just over a day. Trump's company faces now over $1 million in fines and some wider questions about how the conviction may limit its funding, future partnerships, legal heat on whether there can even be consequences for Donald Trump himself, who saw his company now convicted in this case. He faces open questions in the civil probe by the New York Attorney General, where he recently became the first former president to ever plead the fifth on the grounds that true answers there might incriminate him, and stack on top of that 2 open federal criminal probes. That's why even with everything going on in America tonight and voting tonight, we have the former personal attorney to former President Trump, Michael Cohen, as my leadoff guest. He's also the author of the book, Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the DOJ Against His Critics. He's the host of the Mea Culpa podcast. Major news today in that courtroom, and as mentioned, Michael, the facts are a lot of it traces back to what you testified under oath. The prosecutors found it credible, as I mentioned. The jurors found it credible. Your response to this conviction of the company where you once worked?
Yeah, so one of the big concerns I believe that Alvin Bragg had when he first took over the spot as New York DA, Manhattan DA, was could we get a jury that did not have with it someone who is a Trump MAGA supporter? And clearly the answer to that is yes. Donald Trump's, or I should say the Trump organization's convictions, while very, very gratifying, so to speak, it doesn't hold the guy accountable. And the fact that Alan Weisselberg fell on the sword, and so did, I guess, Jeff McConney, who's the assistant comptroller, again, it doesn't hold Donald Trump accountable. So the next question that people should be asking themselves is what's next for Alvin Bragg? And in light of the hiring of the new individual, Christopher, what's his name, Ari, the last name, the new attorney, he's going to continue to look at other crimes that have come as a result of this investigation.
Well, you raised several points, Michael. One, there has been this new hire from a DOJ veteran. We'll put that up. The reporting on this was that Bragg hired this former DOJ official with a history of taking on Trump. The hire marks the latest turn in that long-running investigation. You mentioned what Mr. Bragg has in store. Nicole Wallace alluded to this earlier. He's going to speak out for the first time on the verdict tonight in a few moments here on MSNBC on The Beat. So we'll get his views directly. As someone who was a witness in the case, as I mentioned, worked at Trump org, I'm curious your view when we see a conviction on defrauding the government, on conspiracy, on tax fraud, on falsifying records at a place called Trump org. From your time there, does that mean that Donald Trump himself would be in on those things?
Well, one of the things that I had said, and I'm saddened that it had taken almost 3 years now since my House Oversight Committee hearing, where I had individuals like Mr. Clay and Ocasio-Cortez and Jamie Raskin all ask me very substantive questions that are similar or identical to the issues that were brought up by the Manhattan District Attorney.
Yeah.
So the answer, as I gave then, and I've given to 20 different organizations, whether it's congressional, law enforcement, et cetera, there was nothing that went on at the Trump organization that Donald Trump, not only did he know about, but that he would also sign off on. Alan Weisselberg was not authorized to do anything. That's, of course, until Trump became president, and then he became the trustee on behalf of Don Jr. and Eric Trump. But Alan Weisselberg, during my tenure there, that came across his desk, he was very specific about having it documented on paper. You would then sign a line, and then they would have Donald sign either his initial or his name. So, yes, Donald Trump knew every single thing that was going on. Nothing got approved without his signature.
You refer to that initialing process. It may sound like this is a bit in the weeds of the paperwork, but it's also where you have to go digging to get the evidence. In the closing arguments, one of the assistant DAs referred to what you just said, that they had evidence, they held it up to the jury showing Donald Trump's initial on exactly one of those pieces of financial misconduct, which is now tonight convicted in the state of New York. When you look at all that together and your personal knowledge, do you think they still would have a case against Mr. Trump personally?
Well, let me not say whether I would or would not. How about you had Don and you had, Mark Pomerantz, both believe that there was more than enough to indict Donald, Don Jr., right, Eric, Ivanka, and so on different matters, including this, when at the 7-week mark, Alvin Bragg elected not to go forward with that part of the case. They obviously resigned in protest. So I defer to them because they really are the experts in the area, but I definitely concur with them. I believe that not only was there enough to have indicted Donald in the past on the same crimes, but I believe, and if in fact they did indict him tomorrow, that the same crimes and the same criminal behavior could be exposed and identified for a jury.